Hello, I'm Ted Pike. Have you ever criticized Islam, perhaps for its militancy or restriction of women? If you have, and you live in Canada, Europe, or Australia, you could be arrested as a hate criminal. Many governments now consider criticism of race or religion to be hate speech. They have criminalized any words which might hold people of other religions up to contempt. A growing number of people just like you have criticized Islam and been arrested and fined, even threatened with prison for up to 7 years. Could this happen in America? It will, if federal hate crimes bills now in Congress become law. Today we'll consider this frightening legislation and how you can stop it. First of all, what do hate crimes laws really do? They shatter freedom of speech, destroying legitimate public debate by censoring any criticism of federally protected groups, including Islam.
In 1999, Canadian evangelist Mark Harding said Islam promoted violent terrorism. Convicted of violating Canada's anti-hate law, he escaped the 6-month prison sentence by doing 340 hours of service for the Muslim community. In 2002, 2 Australian pastors, Daniel Scott and Daniel Nalliah, who criticized Islam, were indicted as a result of complaints from the Islamic Council of Victoria. They were sentenced to pay almost $70,000 damages and then ordered to publicly apologize to the Islamic community in Australian newspapers. In 2004, British National Party leader Nick Griffin was arrested on charges of inciting racial hatred. He had called Islam a wicked faith. He faced up to 7 years in prison. In 2007, the Canadian Islamic Conference initiated court proceedings against Canadian author Mark Steyn for criticizing Islam in his book, America Alone. Maclean's magazine, which published part of Steyn's book, also faced hate crimes proceedings. The Islamic Supreme Council of Canada accused another Canadian publisher and author, Ezra Levant, of a hate crime for deriding Islam. He was forced to defend himself before the hate crimes tribunals because he had republished Danish cartoons which mocked Mohammed. Dutch politician Geert Wilders is currently on trial in the Netherlands for alleged hate speech against Islam. Wilders' 10-minute self-produced film, Fitna, quoted Muslim leaders and attempted to warn of Islamic violence. He faces up to 2 years in prison if convicted.
Sometimes even a big name isn't enough to remain safe when criticizing Islam. Screen legend Brigitte Bardot has been convicted and heavily fined 5 times for criticizing Islam. She was recently fined $23,000 for demanding humane treatment of animals slaughtered in Muslim festivals. Many of the above defendants, often after years of court proceedings, have been cleared, but most are emotionally and financially devastated. The average cost just to defend yourself from a hate crimes charge in Canada is $175,000. Almost all of the previous lawsuits or indictments were initiated from Muslim organizations. But in the United Nations, Muslim groups on a much grander scale are attempting to end criticism of Islam worldwide. The 56 Muslim nations dominating the General Assembly have repeatedly passed a symbolic resolution entitled Combating Defamation of Religion. Now they are pushing to make it a legally binding and internationally enforced hate crimes law against anyone who criticizes Islam. Why is freedom of speech being lost like this? Who's behind these freedom-stealing laws? The idea of speech crimes laws first gained public notice in America in 1988 when the Anti-Defamation League, a Jewish organization, sponsored a conference at New York's prestigious Hofstra University. They began to craft a model anti-hate law for America. During the 1990s, ADL convinced nearly 45 U.S. states to adopt some version of its hate law. In that same period, ADL convinced more than a dozen governments in Europe, including Australia and New Zealand, to establish hate law bureaucracies. Yet ADL's primary goal in the U.S. is to pass its federal hate crimes law. Currently, it's the David Ray Hate Crimes Prevention Act, H.R. 256, now in the House Judiciary Committee. This Orwellian legislation is very similar to ADL's Canadian hate crime law, which took away free speech from Canada in 1971. Over the past 20 years, ADL has enlisted powerful allies to promote its hate law agenda. Back in the 1960s, liberals championed unbridled free speech. Yet today, the liberal establishment promotes hate laws. Congressional liberals vote as a bloc for federal hate legislation. They do this despite the sordid record that hate laws end free speech in the nations where they have been tried. Muslims and Islamic organizations are the most recent exploiters of the hate laws originally created by ADL. Over the past 5 years, they lodged dozens of suits and indictments against their critics. But other groups increasingly clamor for special federal protection from criticism.
The homosexual community exerts powerful lobbying pressure to gain special protection through hate laws. It is a hate crime in Holland to criticize adulterers and fornicators. In England, Satanists, witches, and warlocks attempted to gain protection under Britain's 2006 hate law.
Where will all this end? The only fair solution is for everyone to have special protection in the eyes of the law. That's exactly what we had in the first place, before hate laws started giving favored groups special rights over others.
The President has made it clear that he wants 3 hate bills passed. The first 2, the David Ray Hate Crimes Prevention Act, H.R. 256, and the David Ray Richeson Hate Crimes Prevention Act, H.R. 262, are now in the House Judiciary subcommittees. The third bill Obama wants passed is the Workplace Hate Law, ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which is yet to be introduced. To understand how these bills end freedom, watch our 10-minute videos at www.hatelawsexposed.org. How to Kill the Hate Bills and Hate Bill Lies Exposed. Call your members of Congress now to oppose these 3 hate bills. Call 1-877-851-6437 toll-free or 1-202-225-3121 toll. Tell them, please don't vote for any hate crimes legislation. Don't vote for H.R. 256, H.R. 262, or ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. Hate laws have taken away free speech in Canada and many European countries.
God and the American people have defeated the federal hate crimes bill 5 times over the past 10 years. With God's help and the activism of all Americans, liberal or conservative, religious or non-religious, we can defeat it again.